Welcome to Night School and our Derby preview. Pete Denk, part of the Herd Dynamic Profiles. And Pete, we're going to talk about some of the horses in this year's Derby. One that comes to mind for me, I'm curious what you think of him from a herd standpoint. General A-Rod. In layman's terms, he seems like a hanger of a bit.
Yeah, one thing we noticed in General A-Rod's races is that he's a very gradual, methodically moving horse that lacks a little bit of the urgency that sometimes you'd like to see in a horse that has a will to win. And, we dug deeper and deeper into it, and our conclusion was that General A-Rod is just not an elite herd dynamic horse. At times in his races, he runs in a slightly mentally searching way, and we have a term we call buddy up. Some horses like to run next to other horses, but don't necessarily really want to put their head in front of them and beat them. I mean, they don't mind doing it, but it's not necessarily their goal. And in General A-Rod's profile, we see some signs of that buddying up habit.
Let's talk about another horse from a stylistic standpoint who becomes a question mark in this year's Derby. That's Candy Boy. He closed well to win the Lewis. He rallied, or he was a little bit too close to the pace, perhaps, in the Santa Anita Derby, and now they want to come from off the pace again. From what you've seen from Candy Boy, is that kind of style maneuverable with him?
Well, Candy Boy is one of the more complicated profiles in this year's Derby. His development really starts in race 3 when they take the blinkers off in his third start. Candy Boy is what we call a group dynamic horse. In general handicapping terms, that means he's a sustained pace horse or a closer. Blinkers often aren't the best thing to do for a group dynamic horse. They take him off, and he ran a really nice race to second behind Tapit Ridge, and then he won his maiden by 8 1/4 lengths and really looked good. Stepped up to the Cash Call Futurity, and he was moved way too early in that race. It's always hard to quantify how good a horse is when a rider makes an error like that. So now we fast forward to his 3-year-old year. As you said, the Lewis, he looked great in that race. I think that race set up perfectly for Candy Boy's skill set, both mentally and physically. Now, the Santa Anita Derby did not set up right for him. Group dynamic horses don't need to be shown daylight and don't need to be trying to advance toward the lead of the pack really early in the race. And I just thought that was a disastrous decision in some ways, for him to kind of try to take the race to California Chrome early there. So, from a herd dynamic standpoint, as we try to project what a horse is going to do in the Derby, I think our most likely call is that we're going to see something not quite as good as the Lewis from Candy Boy, but definitely better than what he ran in the Santa Anita Derby.
In general, when you're looking at the group dynamics and the herding and all the techniques that you and Kerry Thomas go through, give us a general sense of what you're looking for in a successful Kentucky Derby horse.
Yeah, I was just looking back. This is the 4th year that we've done herd dynamic profiles for the Derby, so I thought I'd look back and see what we said about these previous 3 crops. 3 years ago, we gave 2 elite profiles out, Animal Kingdom and Dialed In. 2 years ago, we liked 3 horses, I'll Have Another, Union Rags, and Went the Day Well. And then last year, we only had 1 elite profile in the group, and that was Orb. I tried to look to see what these horses have in common with each other, what we said about them before the race. And here's what I see. I see a strong mental distance profile in every one of these horses. We also see self-control and a lack of panic in difficult herd dynamic situations. These horses usually show strong body language when they're put under pressure. And when I say strong body language, I don't mean visible body language. I mean quiet body language and efficient body language. All these horses were growing. All Animal Kingdom, they were all growing with each race coming up to the Derby, and they were meeting new challenges. They didn't always do it in a large winning margin manner, but they did some special things that led us to believe there was still on the upward ascension heading into the Derby.
For those who want to pick up more on the herd dynamic profiles, there'll be